There's something I have to settle with Miles first. Do you know where he is? I'm looking for Miles Colby.
I don't believe he's in.
Where in the hell have you been? I've had half the state out looking for you.
We had begun to think you'd been in an accident.
No, we were going on to Hawaii.
We?
Cousin Jeff. Welcome to the old homestead, pal.
If I can't have her, I'll make damn sure you can't either.
It was great to go toe-to-toe with John James.
Jeff Colby, Maxwell Caulfield, Cain and Abel, Jimmy Dean and Rock Hudson and Giant. Troubled, angry, youth, a little more mature. Rock Hudson was me.
I couldn't talk in front of Randall this morning, but I sure can now.
Back off, Miles. Fallon happens to be the mother of my son, and I still love her very much, and nothing is going to change that.
That's yesterday's news. Everything's different now, and we both know it.
If it's a hit because of my partner and not me, I'm all for it, man. I'm all giving, I really don't care.
JJ will tell you this story himself, that I said, JJ, your look was so intense then. What were you thinking about? Some terrible drama that had gone on. He said, deep sea fishing.
What is making everyone in this house so sensitive lately?
Is it possible it might be you?
I was doing all my acting. I'm an old actress. And JJ is a very good actor, but he's also a sort of businessman.
So this young English actor comes on. I knew he was English. And we started rehearsing, and I said, this son of a gun, he has got a Southern California accent down on the money. I said, this guy is good.
I don't give a damn about the Colby Empire. Jeff and his children can have it all.
Very often, you get a role that does somewhat mirror your own situation. And I was privileged at the time. I'd married into a dynasty of my own. I'd married Juliet Mills, the beautiful actress, star of so many excellent shows, Nanny and the Professor, the Billy Wilder film, Avanti, and she was, her sister was Haley Mills, her father was the great John Mills, Academy Award-winning actor, and British icon. And so that gave me a certain, obviously it gave me a certain entree, but it certainly gave me a certain background to understand what it was like to be in a family that had great influence, great sway, certainly in their chosen field.
Just tell me why you're going to London.
It's personal.
I'll bet it is. I'll bet it's as personal as you get.
And the Colby family, to get it back to fiction now, the Colby family, were a huge empire.
She doesn't know who she is.
I know I love her, and she loves me.
I know who she is. And we were going to be remarried.
Well, we are married.
I had Bill Bast writing just some fabulous sequences for me. He was James Dean's best friend. So it was probably Bill's idea. He didn't model Miles Colby on James Dean. Nobody can replicate James Dean. But he knew of my passion for James Dean. And I think he infused some of that love of cars, some of that impetuousness, some of that fearlessness as far as challenging authority.
Miles, what was Zachary Powers doing here?
Came to see me.
About what?
That doesn't concern you.
And some of that desire to have his own way, even at some personal cost.
Damn it, Dad, I may be facing a murder charge, and you're not doing a thing about it.
When you get the script each week, you're always hoping for the best in terms of screen time, dynamics within the scenes that you are in, and also your character's prospects are advanced. It turns into an actor's MO is to ascertain what the objective is in any given sequence. And then in the Stanislavskian tradition of performance, you're also thinking about the character's super objective. What does he want most in the entire world? And in my case, what I wanted most in the world was to have Fallon to myself. All to myself.
Stop it, both of you.
Sure, I'll stop. But I'm not finished with you. Or you.
He's a very generous actor, very funny guy, and we had a ball anytime we knew we were going to get thrown into the ring together.
When you start a show, you want to you're kind of like in a lifeboat together, and you're all floating together. And I wanted to get to know Max. Max didn't want to get to know me.
It was certainly the role I was most appropriate for. I did have a bit of a hothead reputation in town at the time, a little bit of a renegade, a bit of a phony rebel, you might say.
Now, my naughty son, Maxwell, was a different business. He was nothing but trouble from start to finish.
Miles and I were married a half an hour ago at the wee chapel on the Strip.
Very clever casting, because he is such a nice boy, and of course he's an incredibly nice man, and a devoted husband, and I've just been so impressed with his marriage and everything else. You see, I judge people more on what they're like as human beings. I mean, acting is a glorious thing, but human beingship is more important. And so Maxwell was heavenly fun, and has that naughty streak, or had that naughty streak, that made him just perfect for Miles.
One particular episode I have a very fond memory of is when John came in, and typical John James style, he switched off the ignition and just put the car into neutral, and he just glided into his berth in the car barn. I came in all, revving my engines. It kind of exemplified the nature of these two characters. JJ, smooth as silk. MC, little out of control.
I think when he drove through the gate at Paramount, Max was in character and stayed in character. And some actors do that. It was a little difficult.
I guess I'd taken the part to heart, and I'd been a bit rash, possibly, and rubbed a few people up the wrong way. And there wasn't a general movement to get me off the show. There was talk about how and when do we kill Miles off, just for a good ratings return, but also to get themselves rid of this thorn in their side. But I think I survived that call for my removal. And maybe if I hadn't died in the spaceship, I'm sure maybe season 3 I was gonna wipe out in one of my exotic automobiles. I don't know. I never did find out. I ultimately hoped that I'd endeared myself and won them all back in time. But we'll never know. It certainly reformed me as an actor, I'll tell you that much.
Miles, if you think you can buy me back with a bear hug and a pat on the head, forget it. You've got a clear-cut choice. Francesca or your family.
He was, of course, the son of the richest man in California. So that is something that might have been a slight mitigating circumstance.
He was the son who just was looking for more attention. Fallon, anything I had, he wanted.
I mean, they gave me all the accoutrement for the character. I wrote I was a Mad King polo player, which is an excuse to put me in very tight jodhpurs and sit on top of a fabulous stallion and charge around. We used to shoot those scenes down at Griffith Park, where there was a wonderful indoor polo ring. He loved fast cars, liked wearing Italian suits, and being surrounded by attractive women. And let me see, what are the other boxes I can tick? The parallels. He liked the good things in life, and he was passionate. First and foremost, Miles certainly wore his heart on his sleeve, and he was shocked when he discovered his half-brother was actually already married to his new bride. And so the battle began.
What happened to Fallon when Emma Samms joined the show? Emma, a beautiful, beautiful English lady, very, very sweet, very attractive, brought a different dynamic. And it allowed the two characters, Jeff and Fallon, to be more romantic.
When I'm with you like this, I can almost believe everything's going to be all right.
So consequently, they started writing me edgier to give the dynamic because she was softer, just by the nature of Emma Samms.
As far as Miles's future is concerned, Jason will take care of it. He's already got 10%, and in time he will have a lot more. Now the issue is settled.
Barbara Stanwyck was beyond professional. And she said to me, I want those children back on the set, because she would take 55-minute lunch hours. And 5 minutes before she was required on the set, she would have her nose powdered and be back on the set. And she wanted my children, not my real children, my children. Chuck used to give me notes and say, tell the children. I mean, it was as if I was the wife.
Oh, I know what you're thinking. Your son has married the Carrington heiress.
Well, it's true, isn't it?
I loved working with Barbara. She was completely professional and yet didn't expect to be treated as the almighty film star that she was. She just expected to be treated like another good actor.
My first scene with Barbara, and she had a prop, and it was a little toy, and she was my grandmother, and she was going to say how she's been keeping this, and it was, a symbol of her giving me this toy, and it's now my empire, and she's going to be leaving. And but what I thought was interesting, the director blocked the scene, and she said, okay, all right, fine, and you walk over here, look over here, do this, and this here. And I actually, I usually am very good at this, but I stepped out and I was actually watching her work. I was saying my lines, I was in character, but I'm watching her work. And what was fabulous, she was editing. She was cutting the scene. She would only give the camera blah, 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 blah. Blah, prop. And the director, no, could you same thing. She was cutting. She knew where the money was in the scene. And that's where they would have to cut to her. Chuck was the same way. He was really good with props. He would take something and hold it in his hand, and you'd have to constantly cut back to it. He was really good that way. I learned a lot of tricks, actor tricks.
You know, I care for you. Why do you hate me so much?
Don't you act bo-peep with me.
What?
A little tryst at the Five Oaks Inn.
Catherine Ross is one of the dearest creatures you could ever find in life, because we used to be nattering away about our children and, knitting or horses or whatever it is we were talking about. And then we'd get up and I'd turn into Sable. And I can remember seeing her eyes, look just appalled. Suddenly I was just, brutal and vicious to her. And I used to think, oh, God, it's like killing Bambi.
You slut!
But she's got these huge, great, brown, beautiful eyes, and they used to look so hurt as I used to suddenly sable at her. Hey, I'm very flattered that another film star, I was a good little actress from England, but although I'd done my films with Ava Gardner and Marlon Brando and things, I didn't consider myself to be a film star. I was a single-parent mum who needed a good job.
I loved working with Stephanie. A really good actress, really fun. Of course, a formula. The English aristocrat, the bitch.
I figured out who Sable was very early on when I realized that they were going to allow me to be poisonous with my tongue in a very gentle manner. That's who Sable was.
See you tomorrow, Frankie, and don't be the last guest to leave.
You know, a sort of innocent butter wouldn't melt look, but poison and threat and manipulation. Just, you know, best of the baddies.
You and Frankie scheming behind my back, that's all in my mind.
I shudder to think what is in your mind, but I don't care.
I can remember everybody that's ever been beastly to me, and I've just gone, wow, oh, that's good. Oh, I'll use that.
I always enjoyed scenes with Stephanie Beacham. It was an interesting dynamic. There was something very Oedipal about it all, clearly.
Esther was very fussy about the script, and Aaron was very fussy about the look. I think that it was wonderful. There are some writers really got into my mind and understood where I was wanting to take Sable. And whenever those writers came up, I used to say, oh, yippee, this is going to be a heavenly episode.
We were presented a script a week in advance. If we had changes that we felt was not correct for the character, or didn't want to say it, or felt that this was completely off base, we would then submit them to the producer, and then the producer and us would fight. Or, as you get stronger, you fight about it on the set with the director. And they don't have time to say no.
Television directing on that speed, they are so grateful if you've got a clue. Charlton Heston was nothing but helpful, and we were a very lovely team. And we would have an idea so fast and so smoothly, directors were just relieved when it was us. We'd know our lines, and we could go for it. And what was very flattering, actually, was that the crew always used to gather round to watch the first run-through of our scenes, not just because they had to.
Charlton Heston had some difficulty because he was trying to find his base, his soul. And we had good chemistry on the show.
He would save setups because obviously Charlton Heston was so experienced, more experienced than I was, because I used to get a bit excited about the content of the scene, and he would say, well, my dear, maybe if you just stayed and did what you're doing, exactly what you're planning to do, but just stay in that chair, we'll get out of here by lunchtime. So he would support me because he loved my imagination on the stuff, and then he was the technical side.
Don't marry her, Jason. Please don't marry her.
Sable.
Not for my sake, but for yours.
And of course, years and years and years, 30 years later, I could do the job for somebody else that he was doing for me.
We had a very strong team of directors. The only travesty of the whole thing was that we never got to do season 3, because in my opinion, the show was really starting to really find its groove.
They wrote the show right to the end, expecting to be picked up.
We were always kind of a poor relation to Dynasty. Not in everybody's minds. Some actually favored us over Dynasty, which was actually starting to get a little long in tooth, and they were having to repeat their storylines. And in fact, the best ratings the show ever got was when they scheduled Colbys to follow on immediately after Dynasty on a Wednesday night.
ABC thought enough of us to take on Cheers and The Cosby Show on Thursday night. The #1 and #2 show for NBC. So we had some pretty difficult competition.
It was just a shame that we couldn't have done year 3 and really cemented our position in the zeitgeist of American entertainment.
If the show had continued, if they had moved us to another night, I think we would have gone. I think we would have succeeded. I really do. Because we did have an audience and a following. But the network got what they wanted out of us. And they were moving on.
They didn't put me on the spaceship, which was great. Thank God they didn't. I got to be in a Dynasty reunion. I think there should have been a Dynasty reunion every other year.
After the show wrapped, I wasn't sure whether or not I was coming back to Dynasty. It just ended, which was sad. I thought it was a very well-produced show. Might have been too expensive. Might have been for a purpose. ABC was for sale. They put another show on the air that did pretty good. Created some shareholder value. Did its purpose. Wasn't a hit. But we didn't hear, all of a sudden, well, goodbye. And that was it. My theory about the end of the Colbys, with Fallon walking into the light, so to speak, was Fallon having a massive 7-year nervous breakdown. There wasn't a spaceship. And I knew that if we had gone another season, that it would be Jeff mentoring her, nurturing her in a sanitarium. I really do. Because the writers were clever enough, after all of the stuff that character did, that she was flipping out. And people say, spaceship, what are you kidding me? How stupid. No, she was having a nervous breakdown. And she's driving through the desert, crying and all this stuff. And it wasn't a spaceship. She was flipping out. Right after the Colbys was canceled, I didn't have a Dynasty contract because I had a Colbys contract. And I thought, well, is there any reason for me to come back to Dynasty? I don't know. And of course there was. So Emma, playing Fallon, came back to Dynasty. I came back to Dynasty. Stephanie came over. Tracy Scoggins came over. Max did not come over, which I was surprised. I would have liked him to come to Dynasty. Maybe because Gordon Thompson playing Adam on Dynasty would have been he was such an evil guy there. There would have been a conflict. But it was those people who came over.
I think that it was hard to have 2 soaps of this sort, 2 glamour soaps working, and that they would kill the child and try and hold on to the parent. I think that's how it went. I didn't mind. As Chuck said when somebody said, isn't it awfully sad that Colbys is coming to an end? He said, yes, but it's the longest job I've ever had.
We had just wrapped. We thought, we hadn't heard, the final episode, possibly, of Dynasty. And I had done 235 hours of Dynasty, including the Colbys. And was, I think, the only character, with the exception of John, who had done them all as well, John Forsythe. And I thought, this may be it. And I took my suit off, and I was very clean always, hung my jacket and hung my pants up. And I looked and I said, "Goodbye, Jeff." And I put my suit on the rack and turned. And that was the end of Jeff. You know, actors always have a little piece of themselves in their characters. And it was a decade of my life that is hanging somewhere in a costume department at some studio.
I think to watch the Colbys is one of the most fabulous, jaw-droppingly delightful things to do, and I am so thrilled that it's coming out on DVDs. I think that it will get a whole generation of new fans that want comforting in these very hard times.
I find it amazing. It's been 25 years since the show went off the air. And flying out here to California, I was delayed in Atlanta, and I'm having a drink at the bar. And 1, 2, 3, 4 people of all different ages recognized me. One used to watch it. One watched it with his mother. Another one was a teenager. The other one was older than I am, like grandmother. And I just can't imagine that that show had that kind of an impact. That when people stop me, because it's been so long, and they say, "My God, Dynasty." And I remember when I was working on Dynasty, and I was meeting people from the early 60s, thinking how long ago that was. In the 80s, 20 years ago. And here I am, many years later, and people still remember and still have that emotional attachment to a period in their life.